My wife divorced me by text. I'm leaving you and moving to LA with my 20-year-old boy toy. I've already emptied our joint account, haha. I calmly replied, good luck. When she realized what I'd done, it was already too late. The text arrived between helping customers at my boutique. I'm leaving you and moving to LA with my 20-year-old boyfriend. I've already emptied our joint account, haha. My hands didn't shake as I read it. My voice didn't waver as I helped Mr. Pete pick out a tie. The only sign that my wife of 14 years had just nuked our marriage via text was a slight tightening around my eyes. I waited until Mr. Pete left. His purchase wrapped in our signature golden paper. Before typing my response. Good luck. My name is Callum, and at 44, I just received the most callous goodbye in history. But while Kelly was probably gloating over her grand exit, imagining me in tears over her betrayal, I was calmly locking up my boutique for the day. The signs had been there for months. The late nights at work that never matched her pay deposits. The sudden password changes on her phone. The way she'd started going to the gym religiously, buying new clothes, trying to recapture her youth. 4 months ago, I'd found a receipt for dinner for two at an expensive restaurant on a night she'd claimed to be working late. That same evening, I'd opened a separate bank account at a different bank. A week later, when she mentioned wanting to combine our accounts to simplify things, I'd agreed cheerfully while moving my personal savings to the new account. The joint account she'd just emptied? It contained exactly enough to keep her from getting suspicious, about 2 months' worth of regular deposits. The rest was safely tucked away, along with detailed records of every suspicious transaction she'd made over the past year. My phone buzzed again. Don't bother begging. Zach and I leave tomorrow. I'll send for my things later. Zach, the new receptionist at her office. I'd met him at the company Christmas party, watched him laugh too loudly at Kelly's jokes. Noticed how he'd touched her arm when he thought no one was looking. He was young enough to be her son, naive enough to think he was special. I didn't respond to her text. Instead, I called my lawyer, the one I'd consulted 2 months ago when I'd found the hotel charges on our credit card statement. It's time, I said simply. She just made her move. The papers are ready, he replied. I'll file them first thing tomorrow. Do you want me to have her served in LA? No rush. Let her think she's won first. Another text from Kelly. I know this must be hard for you. You're not getting any younger after all. At least you have your little shop to keep you busy. My little shop, the successful boutique I'd built from scratch, the one that generated more income than her middle management position, the one whose profits I'd carefully kept separate from our joint finances. I smiled, thinking of the certified letters that would greet her in LA, let her enjoy her moment of triumph. I spent that evening in our house, my house since I'd inherited it from my grandfather and kept it in my name despite Kelly's repeated suggestions to add her to the deed. Another lucky instinct that had paid off. While organizing the paperwork my lawyer would need, I found our wedding album. Kelly looked so different than before. Her midlife crisis had turned her into a caricature of her former self. These days she wore shirts too tight for her, tried too hard to connect with the 20-somethings at her office, used slang that sounded ridiculous coming from a woman of 45. My phone kept buzzing with texts from her, each one more condescending than the last. I've been planning this for months. Zach understands me in ways you never could. You'll be fine. Maybe you'll find someone more your own age. Already told my family. They agree we grew apart. It's nobody's fault, really. I screenshotted each message, adding them to my evidence folder. Let her dig her hole deeper. My lawyer would love her casual admission of premeditation, her gleeful announcement about emptying our account. The last text caught my attention. BTW, I used the joint card to book our flights and hotel. Consider it my parting gift, LOL. Perfect. I called the credit card company. Mr. Jameson speaking. I need to report fraudulent charges and cancel a card immediately. Of course, sir. Can you identify the charges? 2 first-class tickets to LA booked today. Hotel charges at the Four Seasons Hotel. And I'll need to remove my wife as an authorized user. Do you have documentation of the fraud? Text messages from my wife admitting she used our joint card to book travel with her boyfriend after emptying our bank account. I'll be happy to forward them. The representative's professional tone couldn't quite hide his satisfaction as he canceled the charges. Kelly and Zach would arrive at the airport tomorrow to find their tickets invalidated, their hotel reservation canceled. My phone buzzed again. Don't worry about the house. I'll let you stay there until you find something smaller. I actually laughed out loud at that one. Did she really think she had any claim to my grandfather's house? Had her ego grown so large that she'd forgotten whose name was on the deed? Another buzz. And I know the shop means a lot to you. We can work out a fair payment for your half. My half. Of my business. That I'd built myself, funded myself, grown myself while she complained about my long hours and called it my hobby. I poured a glass of iced tea, and relaxed. Tomorrow, Kelly would learn some hard truths about property law and separate assets. But tonight, I'd enjoy the quiet and plan my next chapter. Morning brought a flurry of increasingly angry texts from Kelly. What the heck did you do to our credit card? The airline won't honor our tickets. The hotel canceled our reservation. Answer me. I silenced my phone and headed to my boutique. Friday was always our busiest day. And I had a new shipment of designer handbags to unpack. Life goes on, even when your wife runs off with a receptionist young enough to be her son. Around noon, her father called. Callum, son, Kelly told us everything about how controlling you've been, how you drove her away. She says you're being vindictive now, causing problems with her travel plans. I put him on speaker while I arranged a window display. Did she mention emptying our joint account and charging tickets for her and her boyfriend on our credit card? Silence. Then, well, she said you left her no choice, that you'd been cold and distant. Barry, I have her texts. Would you like me to read them to you? The one where she bragged about taking our money? Or maybe the one where she mocked my age? Another pause. She did seem a bit cruel. I told her that text message was inappropriate. I appreciate the call, Barry. I've always liked you. But I think it's best if we end this conversation now. My lawyer has advised minimal contact with Kelly's family during the proceedings. Proceedings? Already? Goodbye, Barry. By late afternoon, Kelly's brother Ethan was spreading family gossip through mutual friends. Apparently, Kelly and Zach were stuck at a budget their LA dreams temporarily derailed. She'd tried using her personal credit cards, but those had been maxed out for months, another red flag I'd noticed. My lawyer called with an update. The emergency hearing is scheduled for Monday. Given her admission of emptying the joint account and the documented credit card fraud, we're in a strong position to freeze all remaining assets. Has she been served yet? Not yet, but she'll get the papers at her new motel address. Speaking of which, his boyfriend's social media is providing excellent evidence. He's been posting about their adventure all day, including some choice comments about you. I smiled thinking of my own documentation, a year's worth of suspicious charges, hotel receipts, text messages that proved premeditation. Kelly had been so focused on her grand escape that she'd never considered I might be watching, waiting, preparing. My phone buzzed with another text. You think you're so smart, but I made copies of all the boutique's financial records. Half that business is mine. I forwarded the text to my lawyer, adding it to the growing file of Kelly's mistakes. Let her learn the hard way about separate assets and business ownership. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being prepared. The emergency hearing on Monday was everything I could have hoped for. Kelly showed up in her new young wardrobe, designer jeans too tight for her age. A blazer that screamed midlife crisis. Zach waited outside, his youth painfully obvious under the harsh courthouse lighting. My lawyer presented our evidence methodically. Kelly's gleeful text about emptying our account, her credit card fraud, her documented history of hidden expenses, each piece carefully collected over months of quiet observation. My client admits to some rash decisions, but Mr. Jameson's actions have been vindictive and calculating. Calculating, my lawyer countered. You mean prudent? My client protected his separate assets and maintained detailed records of his wife's suspicious behavior. That's not vindictive. That's smart business. The judge reviewed my documentation, the separate property deed to the house, the boutique's incorporation papers in my name only. The careful separation of business and personal finances that Kelly had always complained about. Mrs. Jameson, the judge addressed Kelly directly. You admitted via text message. Do you deny this? Kelly shifted uncomfortably. I was just trying to make a clean break. By committing financial fraud? The judge raised an eyebrow. And now you're claiming rights to property that documentation shows is clearly separate from marital assets? The business grew during our marriage, Kelly's lawyer tried again. My client is entitled to. The business was established before the marriage, my lawyer interrupted. And Mr. Jameson maintained strict separation of business and personal finances throughout. We have documentation of every penny invested and earned. I watched Kelly's face as reality started sinking in. She thought this would be easy, empty our accounts, run off with her boyfriend, maybe claim half my business in the divorce. She'd never bothered to understand my insistence on keeping things separate, had mocked my careful bookkeeping as obsessive. The court finds sufficient evidence of financial misconduct, the judge announced. All shared assets are frozen pending final dissolution. Mrs. Jameson is ordered to return any funds removed from joint accounts within 24 hours. But that money's gone, Kelly protested. We spent it on. Then I suggest you find a way to replace it. The judge cut her off. And Mrs. Jameson? The court takes a very dim view of using shared credit cards to fund adventures with paramours. Outside the courthouse, I heard Zach asking Kelly about their LA plans. Her response was lost in the sound of my shoes clicking confidently across the marble floor, heading back to the business she'd never understood or respected. The next few weeks brought a string of increasingly desperate moves from Kelly. She tried claiming the boutique had been her idea. She remembered investing money in its early days. She even suggested she'd been my business partner all along, claims quickly disproven by my meticulous records. Her boyfriend's social media shows they're staying at his studio apartment now. Apparently living on a receptionist's salary isn't quite the glamorous escape she imagined. Kelly's family started reaching out, their tone markedly different from their initial accusations. We had no idea, her brother admitted. He told us you'd been cold, controlling that she needed to escape. But then we saw her text the way she bragged about taking your money. That's not the sister I thought I knew. Her father called again, this time in tears. The things she said about your age, about replacing you with someone younger, I raised her better than that. I thought I did anyway. I let their calls go to voicemail. Their support might have meant something weeks ago, but now it felt like rats deserting a sinking ship. The boutique thrived, ironically boosted by local gossip about my situation. Men started coming in specifically to show support. Often leaving with far more than they'd planned to buy. My ex tried something similar, one customer confided while buying a designer handbag. Thought she'd take everything in the divorce. Women like that never expect us to be smarter than them. My phone still buzzed occasionally with texts from Kelly, her tone swinging between anger and manipulation. You've ruined everything. I never meant to hurt you. You'll regret being so vindictive. Can't we work something out? That business would be nothing without my support. I forwarded each message to my lawyer without responding. Let her dig her hole deeper. Through the grapevine, I heard Zach was having second thoughts. Apparently, sharing his studio apartment with a middle-aged woman who couldn't afford her own place wasn't the romantic adventure he'd imagined. The age gap that had seemed exciting during secret hotel meetings felt different in the harsh light of reality. He posted about toxic relationships and learning from mistakes yesterday, my lawyer mentioned during an update call, and removed his relationship status this morning. I almost felt sorry for Kelly, almost. But then I remembered her haha after telling me she'd emptied our account, the casual cruelty of her comments about my age, the way she'd assumed I'd be helpless without her. Instead of pity, I felt something else, pride. Pride in my foresight, in my quiet strength, in my ability to protect myself while she underestimated me. The final divorce hearing painted a very different picture from Kelly's imagined triumph. Gone was her sassy attitude, replaced by barely concealed panic. Zach was noticeably absent. He'd moved on to a coworker his own age, according to office gossip. Kelly had shown up in her old clothes. The designer wardrobe apparently returned to help repay the joint account she'd emptied. Her lawyer looked tired, probably from trying to find loopholes in my documented separation of assets. Your Honor, Kelly's lawyer attempted one last time. Despite the separate property documentation, my client contributed to the growth of her husband's business through moral support and, moral support? My lawyer interrupted. Like these text messages belittling Mr. Jameson's business as a little shop, or these social media posts calling it his hobby? The judge had clearly seen enough. The final settlement reflected my careful planning. I kept my house, my business, and my separate assets. Kelly got her personal possessions and her car, which was worth less than she owed on it. You've destroyed me, she hissed as we left the courthouse. I'll have to move back in with my parents. No, Kelly, you destroyed yourself. I just made sure you couldn't destroy me too. Her father was waiting outside ready to drive her to his house, her new home at 45. The irony of her situation wasn't lost on anyone. The woman who'd mocked my age was now living in her childhood bedroom, while I continued running my successful business. You planned this all along, she accused. You knew this would happen. No, I just paid attention, and unlike you, I understood the value of keeping good records. Her father stepped between us. That's enough, Kelly. You've embarrassed yourself enough already. As they walked away, I heard him start in on her. Honestly, what were you thinking? A 20-year-old? Emptying bank accounts? Sending those horrible texts? I watched them disappear into the parking lot feeling nothing but relief. Kelly had thought she was writing the ending to our story with that cruel text. Instead, she'd merely set my carefully laid plans in motion. My phone buzzed. Not with texts from Kelly this time, but with notifications of new orders from my boutique's website. Life was moving forward, just not in the direction she'd imagined. Update. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, my boutique had expanded to a second location. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Kelly struggled to rebuild her life, the little shop she'd dismissed was thriving. I'd hired 3 new employees and launched an online store that was gaining traction nationally. News of Kelly's situation trickled back through mutual acquaintances. She'd tried dating apps, but found men her age weren't interested in a middle-aged woman living with her parents. Younger men, having heard about her history through office gossip, steered clear. Zach had apparently warned his friends about her, sharing screenshots of her desperate attempts to win him back after he'd left. Her career suffered too. The company's HR department had launched an investigation into her relationship with a subordinate, resulting in a formal reprimand. The promotion she'd been expecting went to someone else, someone who didn't have a history of inappropriate relationships with reception staff. She tried to claim age discrimination, Ethan told me during an unexpected visit to the boutique, said they were punishing her for dating someone younger. HR just added the complaint to her file. I was surprised to see her brother in my store. But his presence spoke volumes about how thoroughly Kelly had alienated her own family. I know we didn't support you at first, he admitted, fixing up his tie. She played the victim so well, but watching how she handled everything, how she acted afterward, I'm ashamed we ever believed her. My lawyer kept me updated on Kelly's continued attempts to challenge the divorce settlement. Each petition was denied. Her claims of unfair distribution dismissed. Based on the evidence of her own actions. She actually tried arguing that her text about emptying the account was just a joke, he told me, laughing. The judge asked if haha made theft less illegal. The boutique's success brought unexpected validation. Local business magazines wanted to feature my story, not as a scorned husband, but as a savvy businessman who'd protected his interests. Young entrepreneurs asked for advice about keeping business and personal finances separate. The best protection is preparation, I told one young man who reminded me of Zach. And always trust your instincts. Kelly's father called occasionally, usually after she'd done something particularly self-destructive. She'd tried online gambling, hoping for a quick fix to her financial problems. She'd gotten involved with a pyramid scheme that promised fast returns. Each attempt to recover her former lifestyle just dug her deeper into trouble. I don't know where we went wrong with her, he sighed during one call. Her mother and I offered to help her get back on her feet if she'd just take responsibility for her actions. But she's still blaming everyone else, you, Zach, her company, the judge. I listened politely but maintained my distance. Their family drama wasn't my problem anymore. My life had moved forward, filled with plans for a third boutique location and a possible expansion into luxury accessories. The only reminder of Kelly's impact on my life was a framed screenshot hanging in my office, her final text before I blocked her number. Have fun with your little shop. At least it'll keep you busy in your old age. Below it sat my latest business award, proof that sometimes the best revenge is simply succeeding on your own terms. 1 year after the divorce, I hosted a grand opening for my third boutique location. The event attracted local media, and the story they wanted to tell wasn't about my failed marriage. It was about a successful businessman expanding his brand. Kelly's betrayal had become a mere footnote in my success story. During the event, Zach unexpectedly walked in. He looked younger than ever, or maybe I just felt that much stronger. He shifted uncomfortably, clutching his hands like a shield. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. I believed everything she told me, about how you were cold, controlling, how you didn't support her dreams. Then I watched him try the same manipulation tactics on me when things got tough. I continued arranging a display of designer sunglasses. Those weren't her dreams, Zach, they were escapes. There's a difference. I know that now. He paused, then added, she tried to move in when you froze the accounts, thought my studio apartment would be temporary. After 2 weeks of her complaining about the size of my closet and suggesting I take out a loan for a bigger place, I understood what you meant about the difference between dreams and escapes. I actually laughed at that. Let me guess, she had big plans, but no way to fund them? Exactly, everything was going to work out once her investments paid off. Once she got that promotion, once her cryptocurrency definitely increased in value, he shook his head. I'm dating someone my own age now. We have student loans and a small apartment, but at least we're building something real. After he left, my assistant manager whispered, was that the boyfriend? No, I replied. That was just another man who learned the same lesson I did. Speaking of lessons. I gestured to a young couple examining our designer handbags. Let's talk about your idea for expanding our accessories line. The boutique had become more than just a business. It was a symbol of independence, of resilience, of the power of preparation. Young entrepreneurs often sought my advice, and I always emphasized the importance of protecting their assets. Kelly's father called one last time, not to discuss Kelly, but to thank me. You taught our family an important lesson, he said, about enabling bad behavior, about making excuses for cruelty. Kelly's still living at home, still blaming everyone else for her problems. But we're not defending her anymore. That's your legacy to our family, showing us the difference between supporting someone and enabling them. I thought about that legacy as I reviewed plans for a fourth location. Kelly had intended to diminish me. To trade me in for a younger model and take half of everything I'd built. Instead, she'd inadvertently pushed me to become even stronger, more successful. My phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. Kelly filed another petition to revisit the settlement. Judge dismissed it immediately and ordered her to pay court costs. Thought you'd enjoy that. I smiled, thinking of her in her childhood bedroom, still trying to rewrite an ending that had been determined the moment she underestimated me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting better. 2 years after Kelly's cruel text message, I received an invitation to speak at a men's business conference. The topic wasn't divorce or betrayal. It was about building and protecting a successful business. My story had evolved from cautionary tale to inspiration. During the Q&A session, a man asked about keeping business and personal finances separate. My wife says I'm being paranoid. That marriage means sharing everything. My ex-wife said the same thing, I replied, right up until she tried to claim half my business in our divorce. Trust your instincts. Protection isn't paranoia. The boutique chain had grown to 5 locations, each more successful than the last. The little shop Kelly had mocked now employed 30 people and had been featured in several national magazines. Through mutual friends, I heard Kelly had finally moved out of her parents' house, into a small apartment above a garage. She'd had to take a lower-paying job after her former company downsized, eliminating her position during restructuring. Her dating profile still listed her as young at heart, though her profile photo was clearly outdated. Zach, ironically, had become a regular customer at my original boutique location. He'd earned his business degree and started his own social media consulting company. You inspired me, he told me once. Showing how a man can build something lasting instead of falling for empty promises. I kept Kelly's cruel text message framed in my office, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof of how far I'd come. Below it hung a sign that read, "Success is the best revenge." At the 5-year anniversary celebration of my original boutique, I stood addressing my employees and loyal customers. The space had been transformed from a single little shop into the flagship store of a thriving business empire. Kelly's father attended, though I hadn't sent him an invitation. He waited until the crowd thinned to approach me. I saw Kelly yesterday, he said, smoothing him designer dress, one he'd bought from my store. She was talking about her glory days, about the life she could have had. She still doesn't understand that she didn't lose everything in the divorce. She threw it away. I thought about that text message. Her casual cruelty, her assumption that I would crumble without her, how she'd expected me to beg, to break, to prove her right about my desperation. Instead, I'd built something stronger than before. Each new boutique location was a testament to what men could achieve when they stopped dimming their light for insecure women. The young salesman I'd hired last month, coincidentally also named Zach, came over with a question about the new inventory system I'd implemented. As I explained the process, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the store window. I saw what Kelly had failed to see 5 years ago. Not a man getting older, but one getting wiser, stronger, more successful. Her cruel text message had meant to be an ending. Instead, It had been a beginning, not just for me, but for every man who heard my story and realized he deserved better than someone else's midlife crisis. Make sure to like and subscribe.